Feel like lucid be my dreams. Said you said he love me, so I'm sure you know the means. It's like I'm living all inside a movie in a dream. Sequels to my life entirely up to me. Slowly suffocating, do you notice how it feels? Baby, can you hold me while I'm running through the field like...
Theme parks are designed to feel safe, controlled, and predictable. But history shows that when things go wrong, they go wrong violently. From riders plunging over 100 feet into water that behaves more like concrete, to roller coaster trains derailing inside dark tunnels, these accidents expose how thin the lines between thrill and tragedy really is. In some cases, the danger was hidden for years, like corrosion eating away at ride supports from the inside, or water rapids turning into crushing machinery after ignored warnings. Today, we're breaking down some of the worst theme park accidents ever recorded, and how each one unfolded step by step. If you're new to the channel, don't subscribe yet. I will earn your subscription by the end of this video. And yes, we will be using 3D models for this topic. With that being said,
I feel like, bro, dying Amusement Park is fucked, man.
My name is Tub, and let's get
Holy
started.
shit.
Knott's Farm fell more than 100 feet. What if I told you that falling into water from a certain height is basically the same as hitting concrete?
Yeah.
And I mean, at some point, maybe when we were kids, we entertained the thought that water would just cushion the fall, right? Well, physics doesn't care what we think, and on September 21st of 2001, at Knott's Farm in Buena Park, California, this terrifying reality played out in the worst possible way. This was around 10:20 p.m. The park wasn't even open to the public. It was a private party for Target employees. Lori Mason Larez, a 40-year-old mother of 5 from Duarte, was there as a guest of her sister who worked at Target. She decided to ride Perilous Plunge, this massive water ride that Knott's advertised as having the steepest and highest drop of any water ride in the world. A 115-foot climb followed by a 50-mile-per-hour plunge down into a pool holding 650,000 gallons of water.
Holy
but before
shit.
I tell you what happened to Lori, I need to tell you how this thing works. See, the ride, like many others, had a double restraint system, both a
Her shit came out. She fell. Holy
seatbelt and
fuck.
a lap bar. Operators checked
Holy
before the ride
fuck.
started, as they always do, making sure everything was locked in place. Again, this wasn't anything different from rides elsewhere. So Lori got in, she was checked out for safety, and the ride started. But somehow, as the boat made its way down the steep drop, Lori fell out. She plummeted more than 100 feet and landed in the water below. The impact killed her almost instantly. And when the ride returned to the loading area, because it kept going, they checked and found out her seatbelt and lap bar were still in position. So investigators were left asking this massive question.
What?
Now, we'll figure that out soon, but let's start with the body. The coroner's report listed the cause of death as multiple blunt trauma. When you hit the water at that speed from that height, the water simply can't move out of the way fast enough.
Yeah.
Water is incompressible, unlike air, so it doesn't give. So when your body slams into it at 50 miles per hour, the water pushes back with equal force. That's why I said it's basically like hitting concrete.
Yeah.
Paramedics arrived within minutes. There was literally a fire station across the street from Knott's, but there wasn't much they could do. They rushed her to the West Anaheim Medical Center, where she was pronounced dead. So what actually happened? Investigators started looking into whether Lori's weight played a role. Park officials described her as, quote, large, and ride engineers explained that lap bars can become safety issues for people at both extremes of size. If somebody's body shape prevents the lap bar from locking over the knees properly, or if a seatbelt gets positioned below the stomach instead of around it, the restraints might not work as intended. So the theory was that maybe her body shifted during the drop, and despite the restraints being locked, she somehow slipped through. The ride had no weight restrictions at the time, and interestingly, the same manufacturer, Intamin, had enough.
But if it was locked in, how was she able to push out? I understand maybe they said it wasn't locked in place, but how did she push out to a point and then it locked back into place? I don't understand that.
Other incident 2 years earlier on their Superman ride, where a passenger over 300 pounds was ejected. After that, they added weight restrictions, and since that was the cause, Lori's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against both Knott's and Intamin, and the ride was immediately shut down. It was the park's first injury on Perilous Plunge since it opened just a year before, and tragically, the second death at Knott's in less than a month. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, a train derailed. You know that feeling when you're on a roller coaster and everything just feels solid? Like the whole thing is one connected piece? Yeah, well, that's exactly what you would want. Because on September 5th, 2003, at Disneyland, the supposedly happiest place on Earth, that connection failed in the worst way possible.
Yo, Disneyland has a ridiculous amount of people who have died there. It's actually fucked. Yo, it's actually a crazy amount of people who have died at
20 a.m. of Friday, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad was running like it always did, taking guests on this wild mine train adventure through caverns and red rock formations. The ride's whole concept is that you're on a runaway train in the Old West, zooming past falling rocks and waterfalls. It opened back in 1979 and could carry up to 32 people across 5 passenger cars, pulled by a small decorative locomotive. Anyway, what happened is kinda insane. The train sped through the outdoor section, past all the desert scenery, and then headed uphill into one of those tunnel sections designed to look like a mine shaft. But as it climbed up that incline inside the dark tunnel, something catastrophic occurred. The passenger cars broke loose from the locomotive. The low red engine that's supposed to be pulling everything derailed at the top of the incline.
Yo, that's fucked. That's fucked. That's how were they connected for it to do that though? Come apart and then it was, I already know what happened. It came apart, it spun back. Mother decapitated. That's fucked.
Passenger cars, now controlled, rolled backward down the grade. They ended up about 20 to 30 feet away from the derailed locomotive. And in that chaos, in the dark tunnel, 22-year-old Marcelo Torres from Gardena was killed. Now the thing
and the fuck part is he could probably see this shit happen. There's nothing he could do. Bro, he's probably locked in. There's nothing he could do. Holy shit.
such a derailment in such a confined space is that there's nowhere to run. When that locomotive came off the tracks and the car separated, Torres was sitting in the front passenger car. From the aftermath images, you can see how brutal it was. The derailed locomotive ended up positioned low enough to strike passengers in the front car directly. Torres suffered a fatal head injury from the impact. Also, you should know that brain injuries from blunt force trauma are devastating because the skull, despite being strong, can only protect so much. When something hits your head with enough force, the brain essentially slams
swollen brain bleed, I'm calling it,
against the side of your skull, causing bleeding, swelling, and tissue damage. So, as you might expect, the scene that followed was absolute chaos. John and Lori Wims from Seattle were waiting in line for the next train when they saw two young men running out shouting, "Someone is hurt bad. It's really serious. Get someone up here." Riders who could move were scrambling out of the tunnel, calling for help to confuse park guests who had no idea what just happened. What made it worse is that getting everyone out wasn't simple. The cars were in a precarious position inside that tunnel. Anaheim firefighters initially called for mechanical jaws, the kind used to cut people out of car wrecks, along with portable lights and ventilators. They ended up canceling the jaws request and instead focused on stabilizing the cars so they wouldn't shift and cause more injuries, because from that incident alone, 10 other riders were hurt, ranging from 9 to 47 years old. Vicente Gutierrez, age 22 from Wilmington, got the worst of it among the survivors, with facial cuts and chest injuries, including possible broken ribs. He ended up in serious condition at UCI Medical Center. And just a little bit more context, when your ribs break, you're risking punctured lungs, damaged blood vessels, and breathing complications. So yeah, that's serious. Eventually, 49 firefighters, 4 engines, and 6 ambulances responded to the scene. Frontierland got sealed off completely, with park employees with raccoon skin caps keeping guests away while emergency crews worked.
I feel like as soon as that shit hits you, you're just because he's stuck. There's nothing he could do. He's stuck in that shit. You can't dodge, you can't weave that, you can't do nothing. I feel like as soon as that hit it, he's just black. He just everything faded into black immediately, gang. That shit is fucked.
Disneyland's 10th.
His family gonna sue the fuck out of these niggas. They gonna settle that shit immediately.
Death since opening in 1955, and the first since 1998. The ride stayed closed while investigators tried to figure out exactly how a train that's supposed to stay connected just didn't. Ohio State Fair. Corrosion led to accident. Look closely at any carnival ride and you'll see bolts, beams, paint, and maybe some rust. What you won't see is what's happening inside the metal. And in 2017, that hidden part is exactly what killed someone at the Ohio State Fair in Columbus. The fireball was one of those incidents.
You know what's fucked? I fuck with these rides too. I fuck with these rides heavy. This one might fuck me up because I might never ever want to go on one of these rides again. Holy shit.
That makes your stomach drop. 6 rows of seats spinning around 40 feet above the ground, while the entire structure swings back and forth like a massive pendulum. It's the kind of ride that looks terrifying even from the ground. On this particular...
You know what it is though? Yo, I think the worst thing for you to go to is fairs, bro. Like anything that's a fair, nigga, you can't trust those rides, nigga, because, yo, they're disassembling these rides, driving them from city to city or whatever, bringing them out, reassembling. Like, you can't trust that shit, nigga. Like, if you go to, like, a Wonderland, Six Flags, or whatever the fuck, or, like, Disneyland, that shit's always there. They're gonna have niggas going in, looking on it, inspecting it. These niggas are traveling with the rides and shit, bro. Like, this shit is not... And setting up fairs and shit. Like, this shit... If someone were to happen to you on a ride, it's most likely to happen at some fair shit, bro.
Wednesday night, the terror became real. Tyler Durrell, an 18-year-old from Columbus, was on the ride with other fairgoers when the ride literally broke apart mid-operation. Not a mechanical glitch or the ride stopping suddenly. No, nothing like that. The structure physically split up while people were still on it 40 feet in the air. The ride had 4 riders per cart, and when the piece broke off, the riders were thrown out. At least 2 of them were launched 20 feet through the air before crashing onto the concrete, basically the equivalent of falling from a 2-story building. Tyler died at the scene from blunt force trauma, suffering head, trunk, and lower extremity injuries. From a medical point of view, when you experience that kind of impact, the skull can fracture. Internal bleeding happens almost instantly. It's very damaging to say the least. Anyway, 7 others were injured, ranging from 14 to 42 years old, with several in critical condition. And what exactly went wrong? Well, the ride had passed multiple inspections. Michael Vardarella, chief ride inspector for Ohio's Division of Amusement Ride Safety, said it had been looked at 3 or 4 times over 2 days before the fair opened. Everything checked out, or so they thought. KMG International, the Dutch manufacturer of the fireball, conducted their own investigation after the accident. They visited the scene, reviewed video footage, and did a metallurgical inspection of the ride. What they found was this excessive corrosion on the interior of a gondola support beam had dangerously reduced the beam's wall thickness over the years. They didn't see it because it was inside. The corrosion was eating away at the beam from there, where nobody could see it during standard visual inspections. Should they have been more thorough? Yes. The ride was 18 years old. Corrosion comes from moisture, and the fireball traveled internationally, possibly coming into contact with salt water, which speeds up corrosion.
See what I'm saying?
So for years,
the ride traveled internationally. Bro, I'm telling you.
This ride was deteriorating from within, hidden from view, until that support beam just couldn't handle the stress anymore and catastrophically failed. After the accident, similar fireball rides were shut down worldwide. Rides in New Jersey, California, Illinois, Indiana all closed as a precaution. But something else also came from this tragedy. Governor Mike DeWine signed Tyler's Law in 2019, which strengthened safety inspection standards, defined qualifications for ride inspectors, and outlined ride owner responsibilities. Thunder River Rapids, crushed to death. Most theme parks.
Gang, this shit make me not want to get on a roller coaster ever again. I haven't been on one in a minute though. The last one I actually went to was like some fair shit, bro. It was one in a fair. But yo, you know what used to fuck me up? The ones they go all the way to the top and they drop you because when they drop you, nigga, you can feel it's moving down, but you can feel your body like moving up, and the only thing that's holding you in place is the fucking thing that's over you, nigga. Yo, nah. This shit making me never want to go on a ride again, bro.
Nowhere,
Holy.
this one didn't. The signs were there. Failing pumps, ignored warnings, a ride running long past its prime, and on one Tuesday afternoon in 2016, everything those warnings predicted happened at once. October 25th. DreamWorld, Australia's largest amusement park on the Gold Coast. Families are enjoying what's supposed to be a fun day out. Among them are Kate Goodchild and her brother Luke Dorset, along with Luke's partner Ruzi Aragi and Cindy Lowe. They're on the Thunder River Rapids ride, one of those circular raft attractions that bounce you through artificial rapids. Kate's daughter, 12-year-old Ebony Turner, and Cindy's 10-year-old son Kieran are with them. 6 people in one raft, laughing, splashing, having the time of their lives. Then everything goes catastrophically wrong. The ride depended on 2 large water pumps to maintain proper water levels. One of those pumps failed, causing the water level to drop dangerously low. An empty raft ahead of them got stranded on the conveyor belt. It literally couldn't move forward because there wasn't enough water to float it. It just sat there, stuck on the support rails between the conveyor and the unloading area. About a minute later, the raft...
Oh my god. I'm already knowing. Watch. Watch me predict this shit. They probably got hit. It got stuck. They got hit. Flipped over. They probably drowned or some shit.
Carrying those 6 passengers came down the conveyor and collided with the stranded raft 3 times. The impact sent both rafts pivoting upwards, driven by the still-moving conveyor belt beneath them. What happened next was absolutely horrific. The first raft eventually fell back down to a level position, but the second raft, the one with Kate, Luke, Ruzi, Cindy, and the 2 children, was forced completely vertical by the conveyor. Picture a raft standing straight up on its...
They went right into... They got sucked in by the thing. Yo, that was even worse than I predicted. This kind of reminded me... You know the situation where this girl was walking with her son, and she was going up the elevator, and then when she got to the top, she grabbed her son, put him over, and then the floor gave out and it like sucked her in. Bro, it's like that situation, bro. Holy fuck.
And everyone inside it either falling out or getting trapped against the moving machinery. The raft started coming apart, shaking so hard that Kate and Luke were thrown out. Ebony was hanging on for dear life, held only by her seatbelt, while Ruzi and Cindy at the back got pulled into the moving part of the ride. The 2 were crushed instantly. The other 2 drowned. The compression forces were so immense that from a medical perspective, it must have caused crushed bones, ruptured organs, and or blocked airways. The bodies recovered were badly disfigured from crush and compression injuries. Luke Dorset spent his final moments trying to save his niece. As the raft went vertical and everyone started falling, he stopped Ebony from falling out. He died alongside his sister Kate and his partner Ruzi, but Ebony survived. She and Kieran managed to climb out of the vertical raft onto nearby platforms once staff finally shut down the conveyor. More than 7 paramedic crews responded, along with firefighters and police. It took until the early hours of the next morning to recover all the bodies. Now you're probably going to be angry when I tell you this, but that was the 3rd pump failure that day. The 5th in a week. The ride had been operating for 30 years with pumps that were, quote, bound to fail at some point. Previous safety audits had recommended installing a water level...
See, this is the type of shit where you just need to be put out of business for this. Like the other ones, okay, the shit was corroded on the inside. I could understand motherfuckers not seeing that. I could understand some of the other ones, right? But like shit like this where you had warning signs, you just chose not to do anything. These niggas just need to be shut down for that shit.
That could have prevented the entire accident. It cost less than $3,000.
Wow.
Yes, that's what stood between those 4 people living and dying. Anyway, the company, lost way more money because at the end of it, they were fined $3.6 million. After that, the Thunder River Rapids ride was permanently closed and dismantled, and Luke was posthumously awarded a bravery commendation for saving his niece's life. Cedar Point, struck and killed by train. Among universal fears, I think we all share the one where you check your pockets and your phone isn't there. This device is practically an extension of ourselves. So when James A. Young dropped his phone at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, his first instinct to go after it ended up costing him more.
Oh my god, I already know what the fuck he did. He dropped the phone, probably went onto the tracks and got hit. I don't know why niggas do this shit. I don't know why niggas do this. This is...
Back in August of 2015, James was 45 years old and worked as an intervention specialist at Louisville Elementary School. He just accepted his dream job as a guidance counselor at Sebring High School. His students loved him. He was the kind of teacher who'd buy shoes for a kid who didn't have any, the kind of guy who made sure there was no bullying on his watch. And every summer, before school started back up, James had this tradition with his longtime friends. They'd spend a day at Cedar Point. So there they were on a Thursday evening around 5 p.m., and James decided to ride the Raptor, one of Cedar Point's signature roller coasters. When it debuted back in 1994, this thing was the world's tallest and longest inverted coaster, reaching speeds of 57 miles per hour while flipping riders upside down and around. The kind of ride where everything in your pocket is begging to fly out, which is exactly what happened. James lost his wallet and cell phone during the ride. It fell somewhere in the restricted area beneath the coaster tracks. And guys, we don't blame the victim here, but what happened next is something I beg you to never try in your life.
Like,
so after
bro, you have to like the least if you're even gonna do this, you should at least go to the niggas who are operating rides, like, yo, my phone and wallet fell, bro, I'm going in there to get my shit. So at least they know they won't start. They might be like, no, don't do that, but they will know not to start the shit. Just you going and sneaking in there and doing that shit, you're just setting yourself up for something to happen. You know what I mean? Or like go to like a staff member that might go in there and grab it. Like I've been at roller coasters and amusement parks where you go talk to the staff and they'll have a nigga just go grab the shit depending where it fell. You know what I mean? For this nigga to just go and do that, oh my god, bro.
Off the ride, instead of going to the park staff to report his lost items, which is what you're supposed to do, James jumped the security fence into the restricted zone under the Raptor. His aunt Deborah Moore later said that given his height and athleticism, scaling that fence was nothing to him. He probably thought he could hop over, grab his stuff, and be back in under a minute. But the Raptor was still running. Trains were still flying overhead at nearly 60 miles per hour. And before he could go back with his things, he was struck by an oncoming Raptor train. His skull was cracked by the impact, which makes sense as what happens when something moving at 57 miles per hour hits your head. The human skull can withstand a lot lot,
my
but not that
God.
kind of velocity and force. Park safety officials responded immediately, but James died from his injuries at the scene. Of course, his family and friends were devastated. Six Flags over Texas, ejected from seat. Millions of people ride roller coasters every year and walk off laughing or swearing to never ride one again. But every so often, one ride goes catastrophically wrong, and the second group probably feels vindicated. On July 19th of 2013, on a 14-story hybrid coaster in Texas, Rosa Esparza became the victim of one of these machines. It was the Six Flags over Texas in Arlington. It's early evening, around 6:45
She fell out. Oh my
p.m.,
God,
and 52-year-old Rosa Esparza is about to ride a roller coaster for the first time in her life. She's there with her daughter Araceli and son-in-law, and they're all excited to try the Texas Giant, this massive 14-story hybrid coaster that twists and turns at around 60 miles per hour with what the park calls the world's steepest drop. Rosa gets seated in the third row, left side. Nobody sits next to her. The T-shaped lap bar comes down over her lap, and here's where the first warning sign showed up.
Gang, if I was a bigger person, I would never, ever ride on no ride that has some shit that go over me. Every time, like a bigger person dies on a ride, it has to do with that shit coming undone. I'm telling you, it has to do with that shit coming undone, and they get ejected every time.
An employee who checked her restraint thought it felt, quote, a little high or not as tight as it should be. So the employee went back to check the indicator lights on the control panel, the ones that light up when restraints aren't secure, and saw no signs of a problem. But witnesses said Rosa had questions about whether she was secured correctly. Another witness wrote in an email to investigators that while getting on the ride, a woman was screaming that her leg was trapped when the gates closed. I mean, clearly there were concerns before this ride even started. Anyway, the train takes off. Rosa's daughter and son-in-law are seated right in front of her. The coaster climbs that first massive hill, and then comes a drop, 79 degrees, nearly vertical. Cody Rush was on the same train within arm's reach of Rosa. He said she was laughing and smiling when the ride started. Then everything went horribly wrong. As the train descended that first hill, witnesses heard Rosa yelling. Several people described hearing a popping sound from her seat. When the train went over the second bump, Rosa was thrown forward violently. She may have hit her head. Her daughter Araceli turned around and saw her mother, quote, almost completely upside down, with her head near the floor of the cart and feet straight up in the air. Then, as the ride began to third descent into a turn, Araceli watched her mother get tossed out of the cart. Rosa fell 75 feet, higher than a 7-story building. She struck a metal support beam first, then her body came to rest on the metal roof of the honky-tonk tunnel, covering the track. When the officer found her from an observation deck, he reported that, quote, the body had completely been severed almost in half, and came to rest against the wooden beam on top of the metal building. The autopsy showed extensive trauma to the torso and multiple traumatic injuries. The fall alone was brutal, but hitting the metal support beams is really what tore her body apart. The family filed a lawsuit against the company and revealed the suspicion we'd had from the very beginning. The safety systems weren't working properly. Six Flags even replaced a limit switch in the very seat Rosa had been riding in because they found it was defective. It was her first visit to Six Flags, her first roller coaster ride, and sadly, her last.
Wow.
America sings. Crushed between
walls.
That's fucked. Working at Disneyland, you'd think the biggest risk would be dealing with cranky tourists or getting a heat stroke in a character costume. On the day of July 8th, 1974, an 18-year-old hostess named Deborah Gale Stone learned that sometimes the stage itself can become that big risk. A death trap, in fact. Deborah had just graduated from high school, and she was working at Disneyland's newest attraction to make some money before college.
I heard about this one. I heard about it. She like stuck it in one of the sets or some shit.
Holy America Sings, this rotating theater show that had opened just 9 days earlier on June 29th. The attraction featured animatronic animals singing songs from different periods of American musical history, basically wholesome family entertainment. The building
animatronics is probably one of the top 5 creepiest things in the world, nigga. I don't know why they became a thing. I don't even think kids like them. They're creepy as fuck. They've been creepy. Even before Five Nights at Freddy's, all that, they've been creepy as fuck.
6 theaters that rotated mechanically around a stationary center stage every few minutes. As a hostess, Deborah's job was to stand at the edge of the stage and greet each new audience over a microphone as they settled into the seating area. The outer ring would rotate, carrying the audience into the first scene of the show. Simple enough, right? But there was this narrow channel between the rotating theater wall and the non-moving stage wall, just enough space for the mechanism to operate. And during the 45-second interval when one audience had left and the theater was moving into position for the next cycle, that gap became a crushing hazard. At around 11 p.m. that evening, Deborah approached too closely to that area between the rotating wall and the stationary wall. The exact circumstances remain unclear. Maybe she fell, maybe she stepped backwards, maybe she tried to jump from one stage to another as the wall began moving, but somehow she became trapped. Daniel Robinson, a 33-year-old member of the Air Force, was sitting with his family in the front row of an adjoining theater. He looked to his right and saw what he thought was a child being pulled between the platform and wall. He heard a scream. When the platform stopped, he immediately notified operators. Most of the audience thought Deborah's screams were a part of the show. They just sat there watching animatronic animals sing while an 18-year-old girl was being crushed to death between 2 walls a few feet away. The Los Angeles Times reported that she died at 11 p.m. during that 45-second interval. By the time staff got to her, it was already too late. America Sings was immediately closed for 2 days. Disney installed safety lights that would alert operators whenever someone got too close to the danger area. Eventually, they replaced the solid walls with breakaway ones designed to give way if someone got caught, preventing similar accidents. The Los Angeles Times noted that Deborah was, quote, the first employee to be killed in an accident at Disneyland during its 19-year history at that point. And she died doing something as simple as greeting guests at what's supposed to be the happiest place on Earth. Kings Island. 3 deaths, same day. June 9th of 1991 at Kings Island in Ohio became what the Cincinnati Enquirer called the deadliest day in the park's history. 3 people died and a 4th was hospitalized in 2 separate incidents that happened just over an hour apart. It was around 8:30 p.m. Timothy Binning, a 22-year-old from Marymount, was walking near Beer Garden Lake with his buddy William Eddie Haithcote Jr., age 21, from Oakley. They were just hanging out, probably winding down from their day at the park. Timothy reached over the wooden walkway to splash some water, just goofing around, when suddenly he was jolted by an electric shock and fell into the lake. Eddie didn't hesitate. He saw his friend fall in and immediately jumped into the water to save him. At the same time, Daryl Robertson, a 20-year-old Kings Island security guard from Hamilton, also jumped in to help. Both men were trying to do the right thing, trying to save someone's life. But the water was electrified.
They all got shocked. Oh my.
Eddie and Darrell were fatally electrocuted the moment they hit the water. And FYI, electrocution happens because when electricity passes through your body, it disrupts your heart's electrical signals, causing cardiac arrest, and your heart stops. Your muscles contract involuntarily. You can't move, you can't breathe, you can't swim. I mean, death in such a case can happen in seconds, but with burns on his arms and neck. He had to live knowing that his friend and a security guard died trying to rescue him.
He survived? How the fuck did he survive? And they died.
Was electrified. Both fell in and immediately jumped into the water to singing out, probably winding down from their day at the park. Timothy reached over the wooden walkway to splash some water, just goofing around, when suddenly he was jolted by an electric shock and fell into the lake. Eddie didn't hesitate. He saw his friend fall in and...
Bro, I thought if you fall into water like that, you're just done. Like, didn't he go fall in the water? He just fell down, probably drowned in it and was getting shocked. How did he survive, but then both of them died?
Jumped into the water to save him. At the same time, Daryl Robertson, a 20-year-old Kings Island security guard from Hamilton, also jumped in to help. Both men were trying to do the right thing, trying to save someone's life. But the water was electrified. Both Eddie and Darrell were fatally electrocuted the moment they hit the water. And FYI, electrocution happens because when electricity passes through your body, it
probably jumped in head first,
causing cardiac arrest, and your heart stops. Your muscles contract involuntarily. You can't move, you can't breathe, you can't swim. I mean, death in such a case can happen in seconds, but with burns on his arms and neck. He had to live knowing that his friend and a security guard died trying to rescue him. Investigations by electrical experts and OSHA determined that an aerator pump, basically a device that adds oxygen to the water, had surged and didn't have a functioning ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI. That's the safety device that's supposed to cut power instantly when electricity hits water. Without it, the entire lake became a death trap. OSHA fined Kings Island $23,500 for 7 safety violations, but that same night wasn't done with tragedy. About an hour and 15 minutes later, around 9:45 p.m., 32-year-old Candy Taylor from Toledo was riding the Flight Commander, this ride that had opened just the year before in 1990.
Bro, if two people just fucking died in the park, shut this shit down for the, like, at least for the day, nigga. How do two niggas die and you just keep shit pushing throughout the day? Like, what is going on?
And riders could use a joystick to make the capsules go up, down, or roll 360 degrees. Candy had a blood alcohol content of 0.3, nearly 4 times the legal driving limit according to the coroner's report. Somehow she'd slipped through the ride's restraints into the empty seat next to her, which didn't have restraints in place. When the pod rolled upside down, well, she fell out, and she dropped 60 feet. The fall from that height is hitting the ground at roughly 43 miles per hour. The impact causes massive trauma, skull fractures, brain hemorrhaging, broken bones, ruptured organs. It's almost always fatal. Officials blame a design flaw in the ride. The fact that someone could slip from one seat to another while the ride was in motion, and that one seat didn't have restraints, was a catastrophic oversight. Kings Island modified the restraints and seat dividers, and the Flight Commander eventually reopened a year later in April of 1992, but it only operated until 1995 before being permanently closed and dismantled. Krug Park, worst accident of the 90s. If you know anything about old school amusement parks...
One thing I am noticing, a lot of these situations are old. A lot of these situations are like from the 80s, 90s and shit, but holy
basically
fuck.
Summer magic in wooden form, and Krug Park in Omaha was the place to be, until this happened. July 24th, 1930. The sun's still up, and Krug Park is packed with families trying to beat the summer heat. The place had been Omaha's premier amusement destination since the early 1900s. 72-horse merry-go-round, a swimming pool with a wave machine, dance pavilion where couples paid 5 cents a dance. It was the park. The Big Dipper roller coaster was one of Krug Park's main attractions. Nothing fancy by today's standards, but back then it was a big deal. Cars full of children and teenagers were climbing up one of those classic wooden tracks, probably screaming with excitement, when suddenly, a bolt came loose. 4 cars full of passengers plunged 35 feet to the ground. 4 people died. Ruth Claire Farrell, Tony Politica, both age 22, Gladys Lundgren, age 29, and Herschel Stout, age 34. 17 others were injured. At 35 feet, that's like a 3-story building. For those who died, it was likely instantaneous. For the 17 who survived, they were looking at broken bones, concussions, potentially permanent disabilities. At the time, this was called the worst roller coaster accident in the nation. And honestly, it probably still holds that grim distinction nearly a century later. The Omaha Bee News reported that authorities promised a, quote, thorough searching investigation that would probably result in a permanent ban on roller coasters in Omaha. And that's exactly what happened. The Omaha City Council immediately passed an ordinance banning roller coasters in the city. Grad night. Scaled wall got struck by ride. Out of all the rides in Disneyland, you never expect the People Mover to be dangerous. It's basically a moving sidewalk with 2 seats, 2 miles per hour. It was actually very tame and probably very fun if you prefer no drops or in-the-air thrills. It's the type of ride you take to rest your legs. Nobody expected that on June 8th of 1980, inside one of Tomorrowland's tunnels, that slow-moving train turned into something deadly. That night was the Grad Night, this massive celebration of 18,000 high school seniors from all over Southern California to mark the end of an era. So the park's packed with teenagers riding everything they can before the sun comes up. Among them is Gerardo Gonzalez, an 18-year-old from San Diego High School, celebrating with his classmates at what should have been one of the best nights of his life. Gerardo decided to ride the People Mover. But somewhere during that ride, as the train passed through the tunnel, Gerardo climbed out of it.
Oh my god, bro.
His car. Why? Well, as dumb as it sounds, he wanted to switch roller train cars. Here's what happened next. Anaheim police said Gonzalez was trying to get to another car when he lost his footing.
That's not even a part fault.
And landed on the track. Another train was following at a distance of 75 to 100 feet behind him. The People Mover is automatic. The trains run continuously unless an operator intervenes. And in those few moments between when Gerardo fell onto the track and when someone could hit an emergency stop, that second train reached him. It struck the teenager and dragged him until the ride's operator could be notified to stop the cars. By the time Disney medical personnel and Anaheim paramedics arrived, it was too late. Gerardo was pronounced dead at the scene from what the article describes as extensive internal injuries that may have been caused more by being dragged than by the impact itself. This was the 6th fatal accident in Disneyland's 25-year history at that point, and it was the second death involving the People Mover. Back in 1967, another teenager had been killed killed in nearly identical circumstances. Coincidence? No, of course not. And still, the People Mover continued operating with open cars and no barriers preventing people from climbing out. Alright guys, that's
holy
it for this video.
shit,
if
bro.
you think I earned your subscription, it would be awesome if you could subscribe. If you think I told the stories pretty well, make sure
Gang, I'm not gonna lie to y'all.
Appreciate it. And also,
shout out to Tub, but that shit made me not want to go on no roller coasters, nigga. Holy fuck. A lot of these situations were old though, and then the ones that weren't, it was like, yo, niggas like going into restricted areas or getting off the ride and shit. But yeah, I appreciate y'all boys for popping out. We gonna be live tomorrow.
Something, baby, I like just how you blushing. And maybe we could bust it at the function. Turn nothing to something. Wish you could just see the horrors of my life may upbring.